So welcome everyone. Thanks for coming on. Thank you everyone for being live on the panel, and we may have more people joining, and thank you for watching the replay. So we are continuing on with our awesome discussions here on influence. And this week we are on chapter 2, reciprocation. And if you guys don't mind for now, if you're not speaking, if you can mute out, but then just come out as, you know, whoever's speaking. So long chapter, right? But really, really fascinating, and it's just a lot in it. A lot of stories, a lot of good stories. And it made me think of a lot of stories. I don't know if you guys would be open if I shared one of the stories. Reminded me of, we were in Nicaragua, and we were sitting just kind of like in this area where there's like a lot of restaurants and stuff. And there's a lot of this where there's a lot of children walking around, right, in Nicaragua and asking for money. But what they do is that there was this one, you know, it was like this tourist guy. He was really big, like this really big tourist guy who was walking. And this little kid was, he was making flowers, and he made them out of these long leaves, and he had made a flower. And I was like kind of watching this whole scenario happen where this little kid was coming up to this man, and even before he could say anything, the guy already started to back away, right? And he started to back away, and this little kid kept going after him to the point where he started like speed walking away from this kid, right? Just anything so that he wouldn't be able to have the kid give him the flower. Like, it's just like, it was just this funny image of like this grown man almost literally running away from this child. And the thing is, it's like, it's not even that, you know, because obviously like he was asking for money, right? But he wasn't doing that yet. He was just offering this flower. And it looked like so unconscious though, like his response. It looked like he wasn't even fully thinking things through. He was just automatically backing away, right? And it just made me think of this, of like, how subconscious is this reciprocity, like he's, you know, saying that it's to all cultures, to history, that it's almost like this automatic response we have that maybe we're born with. I don't know. I mean, I believe we learn so many things, but it's like these automatic things that happen. And so it's this funny story, kind of seeing this live happen in front of me, right? It made me think of the Hare Krishnas giving away these flowers. But awesome, you know, amazing stories. So, you know, what do you guys think? Like, there's so much to talk about. Whoever wants to pop out or start this discussion, what stood out for you, just come free, pop on.
Well, I thought it was really amazing that it's applicable to all cultures. I wouldn't have expected that until I read that. I thought that was really interesting. And, you know, I'm going through fighting with the dad over which weekends the son gets to be with me, that kind of thing. And I'm noticing there's no reciprocity in my divorce. And I think that's kind of funny that you can teach people not to reciprocate as well. So I didn't notice a whole lot about what happens when you don't reciprocate, but that was kind of two thoughts that came to me while we were reading. Heather, you wanted to come out?
Yeah, it's funny because I reread it again because I read fast. I read a lot. So it was funny because the Amway story that they talked about, you know, we do the exact same thing in the other company that I'm with, where we give somebody something for a few days and have them try it, and then they buy it. So I always thought to myself, you know, I would never accept somebody's, like, you know, $200 set of cleansers or whatever, you know, and just try it for a few days because I know I would like it. But it's so funny because I've never done that before, but I've heard so much success on people doing that people are, you know, they do. I don't know. I'm like, wow, maybe I should go back to doing this or trying it or something, you know, because I fall into, I was telling Kat earlier, like, I see myself falling into some of these, like, tricks, I want to say, but they're not like a trick. But I see myself falling into it all the time, and then I see myself catching myself from it too, you know, and I guess I really didn't know there was a word for it until I read this chapter, you know.
Yeah. And it makes me think too, because like, I guess we also go through phases where, as even marketers coming into businesses, we kind of learn, right? And we learn the tricks and we kind of see what's happening. But I think maybe we get to the point too where maybe we think because it doesn't work on us, it might not work on other people, but it does, because we're not really the majority in that sense from that business standpoint, especially if we've had experience doing it for a while. So it's just interesting kind of putting it back down to kind of, you know, how most people would approach it. And I guess even like this guy, Cialdini, like his tone, right? how he gets duped into these things. Like I thought it was really funny, the story with the Boy Scout and how he offered him, right? And he, what was it, like to go to some event. And then he said no. And then so the Boy Scout's like, well, buy some chocolate then. And then he's like, I don't like chocolate and I like my dollars. And there's this kid walking away with my dollars and I have chocolate in my pocket. That was just so funny. And that also was interesting, right? This concession, like this idea of, you know, well, if you won't take this, at least take this, right? And it makes me think of marketing. Like this also has to do with, because we were talking last week about, you know, we were comparing like the whole expensive is good kind of thing and trials and how we have a trial offer and Empower. But it's the same idea, right? So it's like even starting high and then conceding and just going down. And then there being some, I guess, magical point where they're like, okay, right? But the one thing that kind of hit me was, it made me think about, this hasn't happened a lot, but reading this chapter, it was kind of like, at what point is it where people really decide that they want to do it for them versus this idea of them doing it because they feel obligated to do it? And it hasn't happened a lot. And I mean, people don't stick around for this, but we've had people join us where they join us and there's an obvious, it's almost like there's an obligation for them to join us and have said to us, you know, I'm in this just doing it for you. And I was like, you know, this is your business. But the mentality was for a long time that they're helping us. And it was this strange thing. Like I would never, right? I mean, sure, you know, we're here to help each other, but I wouldn't join a business because of that. But it made me think of this. And if I guess we've delivered value to such an extent where in some people's eyes, they may feel even obligated to join. And it's just this strange kind of realization, like I wouldn't want that, but obviously it creates this response in people. So I don't know, it just made me think of that. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I found the just what you were talking about a moment ago about the concession stuff. I found that really fascinating. I'd never really thought about that you can offer something at a higher price and then just offering at a lower price creates that sense of that there's some reciprocity needed because you have sort of made a concession, therefore they should make a concession. I just found that really fascinating. I just hadn't thought about concessions like that before, or why that happens. Like it happened to me, like I went to buy some white wine like a day ago, and that's exactly what happened. They talked about a concession one and I was thinking, oh, I'm going to get something else, and then I was like, and then I just found myself buying it, and it's great and I'm fine with that. But on reading this chapter I was like, oh, I kind of just went into automatically, okay, I'll grab that then, because they'd offered me a concession, or like a cheaper bottle of wine as 3 or something, you know. It was just like I saw it play out in front of my eyes in retrospect. And it was like an automatic thing for me. Like I was walking out there going, oh, I was going to make a different decision, but here I am walking out with this wine. It's just fascinating. It's playing out everywhere around us. Mm-hmm.
It's really amazing how set up that we are on just a daily basis. Everywhere you go, when you go to the grocery store, you're being set up. And you know the story about somebody buying somebody else a Coke and then just offering it to them and then asking them to buy a lottery ticket. You know, it was just this sense of, well, now I have to buy your stupid lottery tickets, even though I don't want your lottery tickets. And, you know, but you gave me this Coke, so you know, like you totally set me up. And the whole Amway thing. You know, I was an Amway back in the mid to late 70s and into the early 80s. And you know, the bug, we didn't call it a bug back then, but I heard other people call it bugs, but it's called a decision pack. But yeah, leaving that with people for 2-3 days and then having them use the products and then come back and picking up an order as a result of it. But one of the things that really popped into my mind, you know, was just a scripture verse that says, "Give and it shall be given unto you," you know, and that just kept hammering me as I was reading through this. I didn't finish the chapter either because it was a long chapter, and I just got the book a few days ago. But where was I going with that? I had a thought, and it was really profound, but unfortunately it escaped me right now. So anyway, I'll turn it over to somebody else.
Dan hit on a point that I was thinking of when he brought up the part about the Coke. What kept going through my head was, what happens if the guy who was the test subject, was a diabetic? Okay? Then he wouldn't take the Coke anyway because he couldn't for a medical reason. The other thing was, I got burned by the Hare Krishnas when I was in high school. I was actually out on a date in New York City. We were going to see The Tree, and the guy walks up to me and he goes, "Hey, you know, you like George Harrison? You know, he's on this album, you know," and he hands me the album. I'm like, "No, I don't really." And he's like, no, it's a gift. It's a gift. And now I'm standing there with the girl who's my date, and I have two things going through my head. If I don't buy this thing, I look like a deadbeat, okay? And if I do, I look like, you know, I fell off the turnip truck yesterday. So I'm like, either way I lose. So I ended up giving the guy like $10 for this album that I don't even know what happened to it. I think I used it for skeet or something. So, but that put me in a position where I said, you know what? I'm never, ever going to be put in that position again. And when people come up to me, I just like, I don't even, you know, the hand doesn't go out. I don't even put the hand out. It's just like, I just walk past. Maybe it's that New York thing again, like we said last week in the culture thing, but you get burned once, you just learn and you walk on. So.
I remember what I was going to say. You know, different situations where you go into somebody's office, whether it be a car salesman's office or some financial type of, you know, people that give you financial advice. And I've really been aware of how, like, gracious they are. Can I get you a Coke? Can I get you some water? Can I get you anything? You know, and they just keep hammering away at you. And I never really thought about it until, you know, reading this chapter, and it began to come home to me that they are putting you into their debt in a sense. You know, and yeah, you're going to walk out there spending $20,000 on their package or whatever, you know. And the same thing with, I don't know if any of y'all have ever gone to any of these, like, hotel, you know, they want you to buy into their timeshare in a hotel or something like that, and they'll feed you breakfast. You know, they'll treat you like a king for a few hours, you know, and then bend over sweet lips because, you know, we want your money, you know. So anyway, that, you know, that's the thought that went through my mind.
One other thing too about this, he only touched on it slightly, and since I'm outnumbered, I'm not going to like get too far into it, but the whole reciprocity thing as far as dating goes, a long time ago, I made up my mind. I'm not buying any dinners. I'm not buying drinks. We like meet for a coffee. You know, I can spring for that, but, you know, it's one of those things where nobody has any expectations of anything. Okay. If you keep the expectations at a level where both people are on the same playing field, then no one thinks that anybody owes anybody anything in the whole dating process. So, I mean, that's just how I look at it. And when he started talking about that, I was like, you know, I never had any money anyway to like start buying dinners and stuff to take people out. So like that whole thing about, you know, the woman's like, I don't want him to feel like, you know, I owe him something. I never thought about that ever. So that's just my perspective. So.
That's funny you say that. I think that's also culture, because let me tell you, I'm a Southern girl, and I probably can buy my own dinners, but men buy my dinner for me, and I don't owe them anything for buying me dinner because, you know, I get treated like a lady. I am a lady. I will be treated like a lady. And so, you know, that's just like, they open doors for me, they buy dinner for me, and I'll be a really good person, and I'm kind and stuff because that's just who I am. It's just, that's just something that's ingrained with me, my culture and everything.
That's the difference. Opening doors is manners. Buying dinner and going out on dates is a whole different ballgame. when
And
you
to me, buying dinner is
when you have manners, I open doors for men and women. Okay, it's just manners.
yeah.
That's kind of a different ballgame.
Well, I think actually buying me dinner is manners too. That's just how I was raised. So, I mean, again, it's not right or wrong. It's just a culture thing. You know what I mean? I feel like, you know, that's just how I was raised. That's how my family raised me. And that's just how I am. But that also means I love cooking. You know, I'm more than happy to cook dinner all day long for people, you know, and stuff. And that's also something that I could do all the cooking in the family. That's a manner. That's not manners. That's just a culture thing that I was raised to do. But back to like the part in the book that I think is really cool is the whole rejection. It's called rejection. What's it called? Hold on a second. Rejection, then retreat. I use that all the time in my business, in my consulting business. I use it all the time. I always start when people ask me for my services, how much I charge. I'll always say that I charge like $500 an hour because I really want them to pay me $250 an hour for my services. So I always start high. And then they're like, oh, and I go, wow. I go, well, normally I'll charge, you know, some $500 an hour, but for you, you know, I know that you're just starting out, and you come to me, so I'll give it to you for $250 an hour. And they're like, oh my God, that's such a deal. Where do I sign? I mean, it's just like, it's all about how, you know, you kind of do it. And that's definitely what they do in EN big time, is they'll start high and get people to come in low. I know, like, in almost I've done a lot of sales, and that's definitely, you know, where again, when I was a biotech sales rep, what do? You walk into a doctor's office and you give them free samples. You give the patient free samples. You give the doctors free samples. It's reciprocity, you know, where they're like, oh, wow, you know, the patient gets free samples. So all of a sudden, and the drug works for them, they're going to use it, you know, and stuff. So that was very interesting. They talked about how, like, you know, scientists are influenced. It's very much so that scientists are influenced, you know. That's why the pharma guidelines have changed so much, for the biotech and pharmaceutical companies can't actually do nice things for doctors anymore, really, because of the fact that reciprocity very much did apply. So, yeah, I mean, I love this. I love these concepts. My boyfriend and I were talking. He actually went to a 2-day training, a Cialdini 2-day training. He's actually a certified, I forget what it's called. He told me certified something. And, you know, he was just saying, he said, it's amazing the principles, how they really do work in like everyday life and stuff. And I love this book. I mean, this chapter is always long, but it's actually very relevant to just people in general, you know? So anyway.
Awesome. Anyone else want to pop out that hasn't popped out?
Yeah, I was just gonna just thumb through here real quick. Also, what came up for me is, I don't know if any of you are familiar with a store called Harbor Freight. They sell tools, and you get 20% off coupons and all the time, you know, in the mail. But they always give you a little flashlight. They give you a set of screwdrivers. They give you something free all the time. And another store is Costco. You know, you go into Costco and they got food set up all over the place. You know, you go get your little bite of whatever, a shrimp or a half egg roll or whatever, you know. And another store in our local area is called Fred Meyer's, where they always got cheese cut up, and you might have like olives in a little cup and then cheese next to it or something like that. So you know, it's just all these free samples that you can get, and you know, it kind of keeps you coming back, you know. So anyway, thought it was interesting.
I always get suckered in Costco. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I wasn't planning on buying anything, and I always leave there like $300 later when I just went in there for like one thing. I'm like, how does Costco do this?
Yeah, I like walking through the aisles and looking at all the samples. I guess it's like a lot of people do that. It's like part of the attraction of going there. So like in terms of, because you know, we think about our business, right, and creating that reciprocity by offering free value, right, something of value, where you create a PDF, or you create like a webinar, or you create something, but also knowing that, you know, a lot of people do that. Right? A lot of people are offering free ebooks. Like there's millions of ebooks online that people are giving, right? What do you guys think is like that thing that can be given, right? And this depends on the audience, but where it would instill that feeling of reciprocity, right? In someone, where they feel that obligation to to do something, right? To either read it or watch it, or may not even be at that point where they would buy because of it, but leading them into getting into the information to even see what it's about and how it can actually help them, right? For me, I back off when someone tells me that they're giving me something of value, right? Because I want to be the one to determine that. I want to determine if it's valuable to me, but you have so many people going out and saying, let me share this with you because it's going to be so valuable to you, right? Right? Let me be of value to you. That word is so overused, I think, that a lot of people have walls now up for it because, you know, everyone wants to, and one of the chapters later on really like influenced me a lot, this idea of like an inner choice. Everyone wants to make that decision themselves, right? And we were kind of talking about this last week too, where, you know, the idea of like how Titan was launching and then they had that like that 90-second video, right? So it was like you can send it to someone and say, hey, could you just watch this for me and see if it works, right? And it's like, that's a totally different approach than than telling someone, oh, you have to watch this, right? Or you have to see this because it's going to change your life, right? There's a difference to it. And like this idea of getting someone to ask you for something. So whenever I have conversations with people, even with my team, if they want something, it's like I need them to get me to ask for it, right? It's not that I'll just give them links or give them anything like that. They have to ask me for it. And this whole process of having that, you know, that kind of what I was saying in the beginning of, you know, where's the line drawn of someone feeling obligated into it versus also really actually wanting it. Because I think as a continued customer too, obviously the product has to have the value in it so they stay, right? If they're using trials or they're trying something and then they're even buying like this idea of like Amway going out and kind of providing these bugs, these packages, the product still has to work, right? In order for them to buy again after, right? After that initial kind of trial period. So it's just, you know, it makes me think of that, like makes me think of what to offer kind of on the front end where a person can decide if it's valuable for them and them to come in and continue to see the value, right? Where it's their choice to build a business and have that responsibility on them versus an obligation to have to do it, right? I mean, doesn't it make you think of that reciprocity, doing it for something because of something versus doing it for yourself? I don't know what you guys think of that.
Totally, that's fascinating. And are you saying that? So I've got little kids here as well. Are you saying that with not sort of with getting your team members or people to ask you, it's both them, just it's the two things of them sort of making their own inner choice, but also about you not sort of kind of giving so much that then they feel obliged. Is that what you're saying with
yeah,
waiting till people ask you?
So it's like it's always like a way of putting it back on them because they're really only going to follow through completely, I think, in the long term if they feel like it's their choice. If there's a feeling of obligation, that obligation will, I think, at some point run out. Kind of like how we all, you know, we may have joined or gotten in because of something like this, because of a feeling of obligation. But kind of like, Terry, how you were saying you went to the store and you got that extra bottle of wine, but now you can see in retrospect, and you might not do the same thing again, right? And same for us. If we join because of that feeling of obligation, we can look back and see it, but continue on for different reasons because we see the value in what we're doing, right? Because there's that, it's almost like a period of it kind of losing its effect, right? Where you don't feel that obligation to reciprocate, right? Because we're building a business and a person needs to be fully involved in their business for it to work, not just feeling, you know, constantly to reciprocate because of being given things, right? Given webinars or... Sorry?
I didn't mean to interrupt you. What I was wondering is, I'm sorry I interrupted you. I didn't mean to. I thought you were done talking. What I was curious if maybe what you was meaning and run this by you is that when you're trying to sell something to somebody and people don't want to be sold but they want to buy, and so if you're coming across when I got involved with Amway, that's the way they taught us to sell stuff. Was you get crazy and you get excited and you get in people's face, and if you can get excited enough, that maybe you will excite them, something inside of them, to the point where they want what you have. And what I've been learning about sales, and I mean, everybody on here, I guarantee you, knows way more about sales than what I do. But I do know that there's a real sticky situation when somebody's trying to sell me something, that I will back away, and I'll keep backing away because I want to be sold. And that can even bring out a real side of me that most people don't want to see, because I can be a real jerk if somebody's coming on too strong to me and trying to sell me something, versus leading somebody through well-chosen questions, through well-chosen statements, to where you're selling them something, but you're not coming across blatantly as I'm selling you this, I want you to buy this product. It's more that it builds within them a hunger and a thirst or a desire to have what you have. And then that they will come to you and ask you, will you give me some of this? Because I don't know what you're on, dude, but I really want some of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense, Dan. And it's like there's such a fine line between, having to discover that true desire in that person for wanting that thing, leading them to that point where they really want that thing. And then from there, I mean, knowing these things work, right? You kind of know to include these kinds of things in your selling process, but having that foundation of that person wanting it or tapping into that feeling somehow. Because probably everyone, we all have core desires, right? But not everyone is in that, from things we learned from even William Wood, not everyone is in tune with that, and at different points in their life where they may or may not be ready to do whatever they want to do, right? They may not be in a stage where they want help. But determining that desire and where they're at, and then from that point, it's just, I don't know, it's weird. Like, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but it almost feels weird to say, at that point, influence that person, because there's a level of, like, I still think it's funny that he calls them weapons of influence. Like, we're using these weapons against people, right? Knowing also they're being used on us. But as marketers, we know we're selling people, right? We know we're selling people. And there's so many people out there that sell kind of in slimy ways, right? Offering people certain things and then people buying and then them never delivering on those things, for example, right? Like, there's other systems out there, even now, right? Making these claims and wild claims that people buy into, but then, I don't know, it's like tapping into their core desires of what they really want through the selling process, but then that thing maybe never really having the meat in it to even be able to help that person for real, right? So I don't know. I think about these things, right? And the way that we position things. And, I come at it too from a standpoint of automation and creating sales funnels and processes. And it's easy to get caught up in just numbers, right? Like, X amount of leads, right? But they're all people and they're all responding in a certain way. And probably a lot of them may not even respond in the way that I respond now, because they're at where I was, a few years ago when I was kind of sold. I don't know. It's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I've just got another thought as well around just how this concept of reciprocity is working, not only for someone who's making a buying decision, but for us as leaders or sponsors or mentors. Is that, for me, if someone buys something and I've received a commission and also received their trust, then for me, I was just realizing that I have a desire to help them, both because I want to help them and I love mentoring. Like, there's this whole just and that's what they receive is my support and my mentorship when they make that decision. But I was just realizing there's an aspect of reciprocity there where I sort of feel there's a sense of obligation as well, because and I just think it's an interesting fine line to walk in terms of what you're talking about, Kat, of like over giving as a mentor or as a leader or something, to the point that someone's then feeling obliged again, the reverse, because you're sort of over the information, like hand holding too much from a sense of obligation rather than actually being a leader that's guiding and supporting. But anyway, I just realized there's an interesting dance there.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I know I've gone through phases in like team building where I would feel this massive sense of obligation, like especially like let's say someone goes all in, then I felt really responsible to help them like in any way possible, but it's detrimental at a certain point for both of us. I'm not really helping them. I mean, we got in and we just got busy and just did what we could, and there was no one hand holding us, and it helped us to do that. But I have this amazing, this incredible sense of obligation to other people. And there's this thing too, where if someone pays for something, I think maybe that process of someone paying puts them in a different, it's like in that mindset, well, where I paid for this, you have to give this to me, or you have to help me with this. And if we continue that playing field forward, we can never help enough for that person to feel, I don't know, like we can get ourselves kind of trapped in that feeling of constant reciprocation because of that person buying, right? And people kind of get trapped in this of hand holding and doing too much for their team and then not producing anymore, right? And I've gotten into that trap many times, almost like a cycle where even when we have a lot of people join, then I get caught more in the team building aspect where I'm kind of hand holding more versus continuing to focus on producing. Right. And so definitely I can totally relate to that, Terry. It's just weird because I just realized it. It's like this massive feeling of obligation from my end. So it's really interesting.
It's interesting you say that, because that's what I've been feeling too. Because when I came on like May 20th, I had like quite a few people come on with me. And it was like, all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I got to make this work for everyone. Oh my God, I better make sure that I'm like, being a good leader and that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And like, all of a sudden I felt this huge obligation, like their success was based off my leadership, which is not true. I mean, at the end of the day, because it's really up to them what they, the same as whenever I got in, it was up to me what I did with this, right? And so now I find myself, like, for example, I had someone on my team who actually wasn't available for like a month, and then she came back, and all of a sudden she's like looking at me like, why didn't these things happen? I'm like, you were gone for a month. I mean, I don't understand how I'm like the one, you know what I mean? But then I started feeling bad inside, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I had to check myself and go, wait a second, like, she left. I mean, like, I still was here working hard and doing what I was supposed to do. And I'm learning, I don't know, it was just interesting. I just really felt myself like, oh my gosh, I was talking to Scott. I'm like, why am I feeling guilty right now? Like, this is kind of like, I don't understand, So it is interesting because when people do sign on with me, I feel this huge obligation to help them be successful. But then at the end of the day, their success, they have to want it just as bad as I want it. Eric Thomas says, one of his favorite sayings that he says a lot is, he says, you have to want to be successful as bad as you want to breathe, and I love that saying because, for me, every day I get up, like, I want to be successful. I want, by the time my head hits the pillow tonight, I want to accomplish something totally different than I did yesterday, and actually feel like, wow, today I did something, to make my life better, than yesterday. So I don't know. It's weird though, because he talks about that in there, the whole guilt thing and the, we don't want to look like we're kind of like, we're basically, what's that called? What's that called?
Because there's also like moochers or, yeah.
That's it, moocher. I'm like, we don't want to be a moocher, right?
Okay, thanks, Heather. Thanks for coming on. Fantastic. So awesome. So it's kind of like we can end it out here unless you guys have more, want to discuss, but it's kind of like, what's interesting is, first of all, will that feeling ever go away? Right? Of us feeling this, like, how deep is it of this instant, oh, I have to help this person when they join us or join me, versus having the awareness that there is a response like that can be automatic, but having the awareness of it maybe can kind of, lower its power over us. right? Because I can totally relate to what you're saying, Julianne. It's like, sometimes it's like overwhelming. Like, I start thinking about other people and people do blame, and people do say, you owe me this because I did this, right? And it's like, no, I did the same thing, right? And I'm here, and I'm committed to my success, right? So yeah, it's interesting. So I think this awareness also, because I didn't even think of that reading it, like from our perspective as people signing people up with us, right? But also thinking of it in the sense though that Empower Network is, and this is what I love, like this is one of those things, this is just my personal kind of opinion or like experience, I guess. We haven't really created our own like coaching program or anything. And part of me, it's because of that, because I like pointing to Empower and I like pointing to tools and resources because I know they helped us. And so it's like I can put it more on the responsibility of that. And maybe that sounds kind of cowardly because I haven't put it on me. But this feeling of wanting to, or knowing the line of how to deliver content, even like it's awesome we have Project Titan, right? Because it talks about that. But being able to know how to do that and pricing and all of these things, like that's something that stopped me in the past from doing it because, it's easier. It's easier to point to things and have an equal playing field, I guess, because we all have that here. We have an equal playing field in that sense where we can leverage something and, but this is a lot to think about, guys. A lot to chew on. So does anyone want to come out like with final thoughts before we close it out? This is fantastic. I'm thinking about this a lot.
Well, I just got the book, so when I started reading, obviously I read, straight through, and you guys did chapter 1 last week, but I was really amazed with the how he related to the animal kingdom and how the instincts that animals have that like the turkey mother that responds as a turkey mother to the babies go peep peep peep, and just how really conditioned that we are as human beings. And I've seen a program quite a few years ago, and I can't remember all the particulars, but they were showing, and I don't want to sound rank or anything here, but they were showing males and females at like a singles club where they were like hooking up and and meeting each other, and different just bodily movements that like the females was making and different body movements that the males was making that I realize that we're above the animal kingdom in the sense that we're human, but how really programmed that we are, just like the animals in a lot of different instances, that when this happens, the societal norms would say, well, this happens, so you need to do this, and just one of the things, just as an example, is that everybody wants to be wealthy, but look how many really derogatory things are said about wealthy people, and in fact, I just seen a Facebook post from somebody that's in the business this morning, and they had driven a BMW, and they parked it, I think is in like Disney, and somebody did something to the car, and it was just a rental car for them, but it was just the fact that they were driving a BMW, and how dare you be different, or how dare you be above us, and just the attitude that people have towards the filthy rich, if you want to call it that, So anyway, just the I was amazed by all the different things that we are programmed to do as what you would call society norm. And the people who break out of those norms, somebody like the founder of Microsoft or of Apple, these different people that are, in one sense, are considered freaks, but in another sense, everybody wants to be like them and have what they've got, So we are so conditioned to act in certain ways when certain situations happen, and it's only through taking control of your own mind, your own thinking, and the way that you think, and the things that you do, to go through that really uncomfortable feeling of, well, I know society says I'm supposed to do this or be this way, but I choose to be different, because I don't want to be like the 98 or the 95% of the, the masses out there. I choose to be different, and just making that choice. In fact, I think Kat, you said something about that earlier, real early on. Just making that choice to be different, or I could be confused. But anyway, yeah, I'm done.
Yes, thank you, Dan, and thanks, Terry, for coming on. Appreciate you. So, on that note, actually, next week we're doing chapter 3. It's commitment and consistency, and I think this is actually my favorite chapter. So this is actually also going to talk about that inner choice that we're already talking about. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's a long chapter, so I'm going to make sure I get through all of it. I've read it before, but it's this one I think fascinated me the most. So I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you everyone for coming on. Appreciate you. And for those of you watching the replay, also leave your comments and feedback in the post below. And assignment is to turn this content into a blog or into a video and share it, right? So thank you guys. Appreciate you and hope you have a fantastic day. Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Kat. Appreciate you.
Have a nice day.